The new study finds more young people are choosing permanent contraception since the Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade.
They're asking for permanent sterilization.
So permanent sterilization, tubes removed?
Yes.
According to the Journal of the American Medical Association, there has been an increase in vasectomies and tubal ligations, sometimes called getting your tubes tied, in young people between the ages of 18 and 30.
We live in a world where people are having less and less children because they fear for their future. But there are more and more flags, ideologies, and enemies. We endlessly argue about who is right and what is worth fighting for, but we rarely ask the simple question, who is all this for? The Children of Men is not a prophecy or science fiction. It is a demonstration of a world that has lost its purpose. A world in which politics has replaced morality and ideology has replaced common sense. Children are not born here, but cults are. Schools are not built for future generations, but walls, camps, and control zones are. This is not a story about infertility. It is a story about a civilization that has lost its reason for living, and therefore found countless reasons to kill. The story of the film's creation begins with Phyllis Dorothy James, author of the novel The Children of Men. In 1996, the production company Beacon Pictures contacted James about adapting her work for the screen. It took almost a year of negotiations to reach an agreement, and Phyllis Dorothy made specific demands that Beacon had to meet before obtaining the rights to adapt the book for the screen. For example, she demanded that the book be adapted as a feature film rather than a television series. After Beacon Pictures acquired the rights, several people worked on the script, but no clear structure emerged. Finally, in 2001, the studio hired Alfonso Cuarón to lead the project. By that time, he was already well known for his successful films And Your Mother Too and Great Expectations. Together with his writing partner Timothy Sexton, Cuarón set about reworking the script. Alfonso was more interested in exploring the concept of the novel than in creating an exact adaptation. In principle, this is his trademark. In Great Expectations, he changed the ending of Dickens' novel and modernized the story. So Alfonso read only the beginning of the existing script for The Children of Men, and then put it aside because he didn't like it. Cuarón was not eager to make a science fiction film and was not interested in the drama that was present in the novel. He wanted to make a film that had more parallels with the present day. In 2001, the world was going through some major upheavals. On September 11th, there was a terrorist attack on the World Trade Center, followed by preparations for military operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. For his film, Cuarón imagined a future that was very similar to the early 2000s, only more neglected and dangerous. The infertility epidemic could be used as a metaphor for the fading hope that, according to Cuarón, humanity felt in the early 2000s. When he was presented with the idea for the film Children of Men, he had such a clear vision of the plot that he was afraid to read the novel. The director believed that it could destroy the concept he had already begun to form in his imagination, so he limited himself to only an abridged version of the work. After Universal Pictures joined the project, the film could count on a larger budget. But the studio executives were not enthusiastic about Sexton and Cuarón's script. The script was too dark and political. It was not the commercial science fiction action movie the studio had hoped for. And just when it became clear that Universal did not want to pursue the project, Cuarón received an attractive offer from Warner Brothers. They offered him the chance to direct the third Harry Potter film. Cuarón, of course, immediately signed the deal. But while working on Prisoner of Azkaban, the Mexican director couldn't forget about Children of Men. As soon as the Harry Potter film entered post-production, Cuarón called the producers of Children of Men to tell them he wanted to make their film next. Since the third Harry Potter film was so successful, Universal executives quickly forgot that they had once disliked Cuarón's concept and gave their approval for filming. After that, the search began for an actor to play the lead role. The list included Russell Crowe, George Clooney, Matt Damon, and Clive Owen. Cuarón chose Clive Owen because during their meeting, he saw that the actor really understood his character Theo. Owen understood the plot so well that Cuarón and Sexton even asked him to work on the script with them. However, Clive is not listed in the official list of screenwriters, so it is unknown how significant his contribution was. Emmanuel Lubezki, who collects Oscars like souvenirs from his travels, was invited to be the cinematographer. The main task was to give the film a documentary style, as if someone just happened to be there with a camera to capture the moment. The director and cinematographer did not want to give preference to the characters over their surroundings. They avoided close-ups. This was done so that the viewer would feel like one of the inhabitants of utopian London. There are 3 particularly interesting episodes in the film that are worth mentioning. The first is a 4-minute fragment that takes place inside a car during an attack. Special camera mounts were developed for filming it, and the car itself underwent significant modifications. The windshield was made hinged so that it would not interfere with the camera. The design of the seats was also changed. During the filming of this scene, complex choreography was put in place with every movement calculated down to the second. In this scene, a bullet pierces the windshield, a murder takes place, and the motorcycle chasing the car crashes. All of this is shown in one shot. There are no cuts, no noticeable transitions between frames. This was made possible by the use of many digital tricks. Some elements in this scene are CGI effects, and in reality it is not one long shot. The scene consists of 6 fragments, but on the screen it looks seamless. This is, without exaggeration, the precision work of visual effects masters. Even more impressive is the sequence that takes place in a refugee camp during the fighting. There is a shot that lasts about 7 minutes. The camera follows Theo as he navigates this dangerous situation, with people dying around him. It took the film crew 14 days to prepare for the shooting of this scene. Each time a new take had to be done, it took 5 hours to set everything up again. It took 3 takes to finally shoot this scene. Not to mention that Emmanuel Lubezki had to carry a 10-kilogram camera throughout the entire process. Once blood got on the lens, which was not planned. When Cuarón saw this, he tried to shout, "Cut!" Fortunately, no one heard him, so the camera continued filming. Later, Lubezki convinced Cuarón that the shot with blood should be used in the film because it adds authenticity. This blood remains in our field of vision for quite a long time. Just like the car scene, the combat zone scene contains hidden cuts that are difficult to notice. I like Children of Men precisely because of this mix of dark art house and spectacular action. In fact, there are very few films like this. The birth of the child is another scene shot in one long take, which also uses impressively convincing special effects. The lower part of Key's body in this scene was fake, and the film crew pushed a baby mannequin through it, which was then modified using digital effects. At the beginning of the film, terrorists blow up a coffee shop on Fleet Street. This explosion was filmed in London just a month and a half after the city suffered 4 terrorist attacks. As a result of these attacks, 56 people were killed and hundreds were injured. Nevertheless, the London authorities granted Cuarón permission to film this scene, as it had been approved before these terrible events took place. The film contains numerous references. The scene with cows is a direct reference to Botticelli's painting, The Birth of Venus. When Theo discovers that Key is pregnant, he reacts as if it were a religious event. This makes sense considering the film's plot. The pig-shaped hot air balloon flying over Battersea Power Station is a reference to the cover of Pink Floyd's album Animals. And speaking of British musicians, the soundtrack features some of the best representatives of the music scene of Foggy Albion. From the Rolling Stones to Aphex Twin, each song is in its place and perfectly enhances the atmosphere of a particular episode. The scene where a mother mourns her murdered son is a reference to Michelangelo's sculpture called Pietà, or the Lamentation of Christ. In one episode of the film, the character Nigel says that he failed to acquire La Pietà. According to the plot, his mission was to preserve works of art. Michael Caine stands out because of his appearance. He was completely different from his typical characters. Michael decided to play Jasper as an older version of John Lennon. This is also a kind of tribute, as Caine and Lennon were friends at one time. The film also has comical elements. For example, the only people who do not live in poverty are former communists, and the icing on the cake is that they built their fortress in an abandoned bank, a symbol of capitalism. When Cuarón finished working on the film and the final cut was ready, the studio didn't know how to promote it. Perhaps mistakes in the marketing strategy were the reason for the film's failure. Viewers couldn't understand whether it was a dynamic sci-fi film or a meditative reflection on the end of the world. With a budget of $70.5 million, Children of Men grossed $35 million at the North American box office. International distribution increased this amount to $70 million, which is a crazy amount of money if you don't have $70 million. But considering that the film's budget does not include advertising costs, it is immediately clear how angry Universal's management was. Cuarón later recalled that it was the worst period of his life. It was only after the release of Gravity, which was a huge success, that he was able to save his career. However, the film received critical acclaim, and many critics included it in their lists of the best films of 2006. Children of Men was nominated for Oscars for Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, and Best Adapted Screenplay. But it did not win any awards. Despite the fact that little remained of the original novel, Phyllis James also liked the film. Alfonso Cuarón received a letter from her in which she expressed her admiration for the film. Cuarón's frightening vision of the future is entirely plausible, and the more time passes since the film's release, the less it seems like science fiction. For example, since 2022, there has been a growing demand for sterilization among young childless women in the United States. Among the main factors are changes in abortion legislation and economic factors. I came across a video on Instagram where a young mother showed how much it cost her to give birth to a child, more than $50,000. Although in the film the reasons for the lack of births are linked to an infertility epidemic, it is difficult not to wonder how a society will develop in which the ability to have a child becomes a luxury. Now is indeed a good time to recall this wonderful film and once again realize that it is not art that imitates life, but life that imitates art. Children of Men shows not just a world without children, it shows a world without purpose. For 18 years, not a single child has been born in this society, and with that, the very idea of the future has disappeared. And if there is no future, what is the point of the present? All human progress, science, culture, politics, art, exists for the sake of future generations. But when there are no future generations, all of this becomes mere decoration. This is the world in which the film's characters live. They go to work, consume, fight, pray. But in reality, they are going nowhere. People desperately try to fill this void. Some find meaning in religion, some in politics, some in art or ideology, and some simply give up and choose slow self-destruction. In this world, even suicide becomes part of the state system. I find it very witty that suicide drugs are legal in the film, but marijuana is still banned. Cuarón shows a simple truth. If there is no future, society begins to devour itself. It becomes radicalized. It seeks enemies, even among its own kind. It creates cults and is ready to kill for ideas, because there is nothing else left. The main character, Chio, is not a fighter or a savior. He is what a person becomes when everything is lost. He doesn't care. Around him are people who are going crazy in their own ways. Some believe in religion, others in politics, and still others in art that no one will see in 100 years. They accumulate meanings like garbage because they are afraid of being left alone with emptiness. Theodore is the complete opposite of all these searches. He doesn't believe in anything. He just exists. His indifference is not a manifestation of cynicism. It is the result of loss. His child died, and with her, his future died too. Theo has already experienced what is happening to humanity personally. People around him still cling to symbols. They create a cult around Diego Ricardo, a boy who became an idol simply because he was the youngest in the world. Society mourns his death more than the explosion that occurred on the same day and claimed dozens of lives. The symbol has become more important than life. Faced with complete collapse, the state is sliding into fascism. Propaganda is everywhere. But the film does not try to portray the government as absolutely evil. It asks a more frightening question. What choice remains in a dying world? People, broken by fear and despair, are ready to believe anyone who promises meaning. And that is why religious fanatics, revolutionary groups, and radical ideologies thrive in this world. It is always easier to fight than to live without hope. A group of activists called The Fish also finds its purpose in struggle, but even they are willing to use a real miracle, Key's pregnancy, as a political tool. The child who was supposed to unite humanity becomes a bargaining chip. It is at this moment that Theo changes, when he realizes that it is not ideology or flags that are at stake, but real life. He stops being an observer and starts to act. In the finale, when the child is born, a miracle occurs. Not a biological one, but a human one. Soldiers who were killing each other a second ago stop shooting. Not because of an order, not because of ideology, but because they instinctively understand that the future is right in front of them. Although a minute later the fighting resumes, as if hinting that no miracle can stop man's thirst for self-destruction. Children of Men contains a very simple idea. Without a future, all our beliefs, wars, gods, and flags are meaningless. However, as long as there is even the slightest chance for tomorrow, we still have a reason to remain human. Cuarón does not give a simple answer. He does not say that birth is always good. But he also does not claim that refusing to continue the family line is the solution. He leaves us between these two extremes, between fear of the future and fear of emptiness, between the desire to protect life and the unwillingness to condemn it to pain. And perhaps the most honest idea that Children of Men offers is that the problem is not the epidemic of infertility, but the world that has made us doubt whether it is worth bringing new life into it at all. Children of Men is a film about how civilization is not based on ideas. It is based on the future. Take that away, and all that remains are instincts, fear, and the desire to destroy someone. And the scariest thing about this film is not that children are not being born. It is that we are increasingly behaving as if we have the right to take away their future.